December 14, 2023, Broomfield, Colorado. A welfare check is requested at the home where Kristil Krug lives with her husband Dan and their 3 children. The footage captured that morning was filmed just minutes after Kristil's family life took a disturbing turn for the worse. 1 month earlier, Kristil walks into the Broomfield Police Department, claiming that her ex-boyfriend has been stalking her. It has definitely made her paranoid everywhere she goes. Detectives send units to follow Kristil around, and her husband installs security cameras on their property. The problem is, no one has been able to track down the suspect, and the stalking does not stop. Now it is escalating. This is not just threats against her, it is threats against her husband. On December 14th at 8:56 a.m., Kristil sends a text message to her husband. She is never heard from after that. After going around the house, Officer O'Hara notices the garage door has windows, but they are too high for him to see. The footage then shows him returning to his vehicle before he pulls his car up the driveway close to the door so he can use it to climb up. That is when he sees it. Right there on the floor of the garage is 44-year-old Kristil Krug, unconscious. She has a head injury, but Officer O'Hara is not sure if she simply fell or if she was attacked. Outside, Kristil's mother Linda walks up to the house, just as Officer O'Hara opens the garage door for the paramedics. As other family members start arriving, officers secure the rest of the house. She has a good head wound. That is a stab wound there. It is clear Kristil was attacked getting into or out of her car. She was hit over the head before the person stabbed her. They rolled out the stretcher and Linda thought, "Oh, she is going to be okay. They are going to do everything for her." But then they rolled the stretcher back out without her. She knew. Soon after, a scream is heard coming from down the road. It is Kristil's husband Dan. He has just learned the news that his wife was murdered and runs into the arms of Kristil's family. Dan is in shock. He suddenly goes weak in the knees and can no longer stand on his own. This man right now has just lost his everything. He has lost his wife. He has lost the mother to his children, and now he has to do everything. With the killer still at large, Dan is brought in for further questioning. But when Detective Martinez goes to see him, he is in no state to be interviewed. Martinez arrived at the station and immediately went to speak with Dan. When he walked in, Dan became very emotional. To make things easier for him, Detective Martinez tells Dan that he has people on his team who can help break the news to their children. But Dan insists he wants to be the one to tell them. For now, Detective Martinez is worried about protecting Dan and his 3 kids before the killer claims another victim. Kristil's other family members are also brought in, each put into separate interrogation rooms. While detectives are hoping to gain any information on the identity of Kristil's stalker, there is one person that holds the key solving the case: Kristil Krug herself. 1 month before her murder, Kristil makes a phone call to the Broomfield Police Department. Detective Martinez is the one assigned to her case. He reaches out to Kristil and arranges an interview with her. When Kristil comes in, she fills the whole room with her presence. She is very intelligent and very well prepared. When she sits down to talk with Detective Martinez, Kristil tells him that for the last few weeks, a stalker has been following her around and harassing her online. It has definitely made her paranoid everywhere she goes. She first and foremost wants the stalking and the behavior and the contact to stop. Kristil has come prepared. She has gathered all the information about the stalking instances onto a spreadsheet. All she did was create a stalker log to monitor everything. The stalker log is detailed and complete. Everything from dates, times, locations, her feelings about it. The first date on the stalker log is September 23rd, 2023. This is when everything started. On that day, her husband Dan saw an intruder running out of their home. Dan explains to the officer that he saw the intruder when he got back home that afternoon. He came back around 4:50. As he came down, the door was open. He saw someone. He thinks it was a guy, but it was so fast. Blue jeans, gray shirt, ran out, jumped over his gate and took off that way. He cared less about following him than getting inside and checking on his... They realized the spare key that they keep in the garage is not there. Patrol officers responded, checked the area, and they could not find anybody that matched the description that Dan gave. When Kristil learns about the incident, she is more annoyed than afraid. Her daughter said Dan left the garage door open. She was very angry. Dan watched the garage door closing, not necessarily closed. She did not see it as a real threat. Dan takes care of changing the lock, so there no longer seems to be anything to worry about. Just a few days later, on October 2nd, Kristil receives a strange text from a number she does not recognize. It reads, "Hi, Kristil, it's Anthony. Hope it's okay, I looked you up. I go to Boulder every few weeks and thought we could hook up, you game?" And the only Anthony she knew of was Jack Anthony Holland. Kristil's log details her relationship with Anthony over the years, starting in 1999 when she graduated high school. They dated summer of 1999 very briefly. He was a very nice guy. He was fun. Everybody liked Anthony, but the relationship did not last for more than a year. Their life goals and ambitions were two completely different tracks. She was going to college. She was on an engineering track. There were just total different lifestyle choices. She broke it off with him and they ended fairly amicably. About a year later, while studying to get her degree in chemical engineering, Kristil met Dan. That is when it kind of hit her like, oh, this is real, this is going to be the guy. In the years that followed, while Kristil was building her life with Dan, Anthony would still reach out from time to time on social media. Anthony had tried to contact Kristil a number of times over the years to kind of rekindle their romance. Every time she rejected him. Here, he says, let's get together. And she says no. Here, he says, let's get together. She tells him she has a serious boyfriend, like they were living together at this time. And he says, screw your boyfriend. And then she got married in 2007. He's reaching out to her. He can see she has a kid. This is her profile picture of her kid. He says they are meant to be together. And she tells him she is married, happily married with children. He needs to stop. And he got real emotional. It was not angry, but it was hurt. Real over-the-top emotions, and then blocked her, and she says good. She shut down Facebook entirely before the pandemic. There was no way to get a hold of her on any kind of old email address or old way, and that is when this starts. So when Kristil gets a text from Anthony in October of 2023, she does not reply. The next day, she receives a more disturbing message. You should say yes when I offer pity sex. Whatever. Saw your pics, you got fat. Bet your loser husband won't sleep with your fat body. Kristil is shocked. This does not sound like the Anthony she knows. He has never said this kind of stuff to her before. So it is like something is really wrong here. Back in the day, harmless. Now she has no idea what this is. She does not know this person anymore. So she just sees him as pretty unstable. Kristil does not answer, hoping things will just blow over. And if this is in fact Anthony, he will get the hint and leave her alone. But she has no idea that her nightmare is only just beginning. She gets a really strange text message from somebody asking if she is still looking for men. She is receiving numerous text messages from all sorts of different unknown numbers, all of men, many of which are sending photos of themselves in sexually explicit poses. After researching online, Kristil discovers a classified ad with her name and phone number on it. The ad solicits men to send her obscene photos of themselves. Kristil is convinced someone posted the ad to torment her, but she cannot be sure if Anthony is behind this. Whoever it was, this bizarre incident is causing tension between her and Dan. They are not as connected with each other as much as before. They are constantly arguing. Then on October 31st, almost a month after those first text messages, she gets an email with a picture of her husband. It was taken at his work without him knowing. The email was sent by a holland.kicks@gmail.com. Whoever is sending this email is actively following Dan. The message comes with a threat against Dan. It reads, "This your husband. Can't believe you want to sleep with him, but not mine. He needs to drive safe. Don't want a clear rubber hose in his tailpipe. This now is escalating." This is not just threats against her. It is threats against her husband. Her husband has a camera in his car. He did not see anybody, and then unfortunately lost all the video because he did not save it. Kristil now has a clear indication that she and her family are being followed, and she is terrified. But the thing that bothers her the most, is she never thought her ex-boyfriend Anthony Holland would be capable of doing something like this. There was nothing in the relationship other than him being stupid with stuff that was ever violent. They argued, but never in a violent way. When her parents come to visit her that weekend, Kristil does not hide what has been happening. She tells them she is being stalked. She is getting emails from Anthony. He is threatening her with things. He is saying bizarre things. She calls to ask if someone can help her get a restraining order and what that process would look like and what she needed to do to get her ducks in a row. Kristil has already hired a private investigator to find Anthony so she can serve him the restraining order. But tracking him down proves to be much harder than expected. He moves everywhere. He is all over the place. A temporary protection order is what she is going to seek, which would require him to be served with paperwork in person. Because she does not have an address, she cannot submit that civil protection order, and there are tons of addresses. He moves everywhere in between 3 different states. Dan installs security cameras on their house, and both buy dash cams for their car in case Anthony follows them while they are driving. First and foremost, Kristil is worried for the safety of her children and her husband Dan, so she starts carrying a Sig Sauer 9mm. She felt she had to get a gun. She has a concealed carry purse specifically designed for that gun. She has weapons in her home. She is intending to register for a course to relearn. It has been a long time since she has shot her guns, but to relearn and get familiarized with her handgun, she goes out to the gun range with someone, and she just sits in the parking lot and cries, and she is just so upset. With everything that has happened, Kristil's children have started to notice that their mother is upset. She now has to explain to them what has been going on. She wants them to also know that they can stand up for themselves in situations that might be threatening. She is telling them all about what they need to do if an intruder comes in. Her oldest said she is glad that Kristil told her something, because this was making her feel worse when they just heard them talking in hushed tones. Kristil is doing her best to keep their lives as normal as possible. She makes sure her oldest daughter can focus on her dance classes instead of worrying about her mommy's stalker. She is so active in all of her daughter's performances and backstage helping all of the little dancers get out to the stage on time. With Christmas just around the corner, Kristil's daughter will be performing in 2 productions of The Nutcracker, something she has been looking forward to the whole year. But because of what has been going on, and because no one knows where the stalker is, Kristil is asked by the artistic director in the company to stop volunteering and to stay away from her daughter's performances. It is devastating to her. A lot of this is trying intentionally to scare her, as opposed to actually trying to approach her. But her fear is, when does that switch happen where he suddenly gets emboldened because she is not responding? When Kristil leaves that day, Detective Martinez believes that this is a very real issue, and there are credible threats, and they need to get on top of this quickly. The first thing Detective Martinez wants to do is confirm the identity of the stalker. He serves search warrants to Verizon, TextNow, and Google. Their records could prove that Anthony Holland is, in fact, the one behind these threats. When they serve a search warrant to any major company, it takes time. Weeks, if not months, for some companies. It would be foolish of any detective to go talk to somebody that they do not even know that is actually the person. If they get involved too early and start trying to say, "Hey, knock it off," this is not okay. It usually throws fuel on the fire and kind of emboldens. Because look at me, this cop came to me and there is no consequence. November 9th, just 2 days after her meeting with Detective Martinez, Kristil receives another text message that only makes things worse. It reads, "Saw you at dentist. Why, you got so horny in my car, so I jerked off on hers. See you soon." Alluding to the person being outside in their own car watching Kristil. Kristil immediately notifies Detective Martinez, who sends an officer over to her house. That "saw you at the dentist" text has gotten Kristil worried. Her stalker might have put a tracker on her car. They put Kristil's car on a lift. They check that car top to bottom, front to back, and they cannot find anything on her car. The in-person stuff, that is scaring the crap out of her. Since last Tuesday, it has been almost every day since. Detective Martinez arranges for some undercover officers to follow her around. to sit outside of her home to see if there are any weird cars or anything like that. They are not able to identify anybody. The constant paranoia is taking a toll on Kristil, causing more strife in her relationship. She and Dan have been fighting more and more to the point where Kristil tells her parents they are headed for divorce. And then, more texts come in, making it clear what Anthony is planning next and who he is aiming for. He'll get rid of him and then we can be together, so easy. Give me the signal and he won't come home. It is a direct threat towards Dan, basically implies that they belong together and that he will make Dan disappear. Dan also comes in to talk to Detective Martinez. He has been largely paranoid for the last few days. His panic level has gone considerably higher. Someone behind him dropped a can at the grocery store and he panicked. So what is he doing? He is panicking, and he is doing a terrible job of protecting his wife. Interacting with Dan that day, Martinez feels that Kristil is better equipped to defend herself than Dan is to defend Kristil. The anxiety has become unbearable, and Kristil fears she will not be able to prevent the worst from happening, that sooner or later someone will get killed. He will never stop. He will never stop. But what she fears the most is that her children will get hurt, and she cannot let that happen. She is not sleeping. She is just exhausted. Conversations happen almost daily throughout the month of November about where she is, how she is doing. On December 13th, the last day before her murder, the dash cam in Kristil's car catches a rare glimpse into her life. Instead of showing her stalker following her car, the footage only shows how exhausted she has become and how the last 3 months have visibly worn her down. Thursday, December 14th. The security cameras around the Krug residence show the activity that morning. At 6:45 a.m., Dan drives their eldest to the bus stop before returning minutes later, just before 7:00. At 7:42 a.m., Kristil is seen driving away as she takes their younger 2 kids to school. She returns just before 8. At 8:24 a.m., Dan pulls out, heading off to work about a half hour away. Dan is on the road when at 8:56, he receives a text from Kristil asking him to pick up their daughter after school because she has a meeting with Detective Martinez. Dan responds when he arrives at the office 20 minutes later. Sure thing, FYI, I forgot my chicken on the counter, please put it in the fridge. But Kristil does not message back, which has Dan worried. He tries calling her but gets no answer. For the next 3 hours, he keeps trying to reach her until at 12:01 p.m. Dan asks for that welfare check. He also calls Kristil's mother, who lives close by. Dan says he cannot find Kristil. Linda thinks, oh, she is probably just not answering her phone. Let me go over and I will find out what is going on. When Kristil's mother, Linda, arrives at the house, she walks up the driveway. She peeks inside and she is running towards the house, and she says, that is my daughter. Oh God, she is gone. She is gone. Linda is standing right there and says, she is dead, they killed her. Kristil's family is completely distraught. When Dan arrives, he breaks down crying, held close in their arms. With the killer still at large, detectives begin combing through the crime scene, while others start looking for the suspect. They start canvassing the neighborhood. Detectives are assigned to track down Jack Anthony Holland, who is the prime suspect. Dan is potentially the next victim. They have not been able to locate Anthony in the last few months, but what they do have is a license plate attached to his name. A nationwide alert goes out to be on the lookout for his vehicle. Almost immediately, they get a hit, only it is not on any roads leading out of Colorado, but in north-central Utah. Detectives contact authorities there. They make the joint decision to go make contact at the residence. Multiple deputies in Utah zero in on Anthony's vehicle parked outside a residence. They have a warrant for Anthony's arrest on stalking charges. Mr. Holland answers the door. They introduce themselves. They ask him who he is. He introduces himself as Mr. Holland. The most shocking thing is that Anthony is already home just a couple hours after the murder. Anthony invites the officers inside, waiting to be told what all this is about. Have you ever heard of the name Kristil Krug? She may have been Grimsrud when you knew her. Yeah, she was an ex-girlfriend. How long ago? She was my very first girlfriend ever. The deputies go through the events of Anthony's morning. Apparently, he had been shopping for clothes at a store in American Fork, just 10 miles outside Salt Lake City. He shows them the receipt from his purchase, and the officers are able to confirm Anthony is telling the truth. There are a lot of police officers. Anthony is like, "Geez, I must be in trouble." He has no idea what is going on. They ask him if he knows a Kristil Krug, and he says, yes, he knows her. She was very smart, which he really looked up to. The breakup was hard on both of them. They both held each other and just cried when they broke up. He has not cried that hard until his mom died, and they became friends on Facebook. The strange thing is, Anthony admits to having texted Kristil after their split, but says the last time he messaged her was in 2016. He got a little drunk, and he left her a message saying that he apologized to her for all the things that he did when they were together. And then she stopped talking to him. He was done. It was over. Colorado detectives are now left without any legal basis to arrest Anthony. They have no proof he was Kristil's stalker or her killer, as he was provably 500 miles away at the time of the murder. Detectives might have lost their prime suspect, but with a murder on their hands, they can now escalate those search warrants. Martinez has been waiting nearly a month for the digital information that would tell him where those stalking messages came from. But now, almost immediately, the companies respond, and what he discovers in the data is shocking. Martinez feels like he is looking at the wrong person the whole time. Dan Krug is arrested for the murder of his wife, Kristil. He is pulled over on his way to their daughter's performance of the Nutcracker. The data provided by Verizon Text Now and Google shows that the stalker has been using the Wi-Fi at Dan Krug's office. The email that is used, the phone number that is used, all of those things are coming back to one place, and that is Dan's work. The burner phone first used to text Kristil is traced back to a store in Broomfield, and it had been purchased using a gift card registered to Dan Krug. Detectives also do a digital analysis of that photo of Dan outside his office. It shows the photo had been taken in selfie mode with a timer. But what about the text message sent from Kristil's phone at the time Dan was arriving at work? Detectives find out that the text was scheduled to be sent after he had already left the house. Dan is building his alibi that he is going to get this text message saying, "Hey, I got a text from her." Well, she had to have been alive. I've got this text from her. In looking back at his work camera, he takes very specific routes at his work so that he is seen on camera. He receives the text message he sent himself. He starts trying to communicate back with Kristil. He does not want to be the one to find the body, so he calls the non-emergency line at the Broomfield Police Department and asks for a welfare check. He wants an alibi. But why did it have to be me? As it turns out, not everyone is surprised to discover Dan had killed his wife. Just hours after Kristil's death, her mother Linda tells detectives that maybe Anthony is not the only suspect they should look at. Her life was hell these last months and last year. Her husband and her were not on good terms. She told her that her marriage was over. Here in last few months, she just loathed him. Linda kept thinking, "Why are you staying? Just go." Someone remembers hugging Linda, and they remember just saying, "Did he kill her? Did Dan kill her?" And Linda tells them, "I don't know." Linda just cannot shake this question. Is he the one that has been doing this with Anthony? But the most shocking statement comes from Donna, Kristil's stepmother. She did say something on Monday that was alarming. She did say that she felt like she could not even rule Dan out at that point. It appears Kristil was about to discover that Dan was her stalker all along, and it is possible that Dan decided to kill her before she found out the truth. April 4th, 2025. Dan Krug pleads not guilty to first-degree murder and stalking. The very first hearing, Dan walks in the room and makes eye contact with all of them and smiles. He thinks they are there for him. Apparently, the look on someone's face after he sees them, he never looks at them again, ever. While all the digital information points to Dan, the physical evidence against him is thin. If Dan Krug walks free, he will have full custody of Kristil's children and their lives will be in danger. But there is one witness that will change everything, one of Dan's ex-girlfriends. To this day, she is still terrified of him, so much so that she asks to remain anonymous. She says that after she broke up with him, she began receiving disturbing messages and phone calls from someone she did not know. She starts to get these really disturbing phone calls. Here she is being called a whore and a slut and things like that. Someone has bought a voice distortion. The really deep, scary voice. And that is when it gets scary for her. When they hear her full testimony, it is just so shocking because it is exactly mirrored to their daughter. At the time, the messages are investigated and traced back to Dan's college on the East Coast. The woman gets a temporary restraining order against him, but he is never charged with any crime until now. After 7 days of testimony, the jury in Kristil Krug's murder case is asked to deliberate. When the jury returns with a verdict, Kristil's parents are holding their breath. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree. A jury returns a guilty verdict in the trial of a Broomfield man accused of killing his wife. Daniel Krug is found guilty of first-degree murder, stalking, and criminal impersonation. The court sentences Mr. Krug to life in prison without the possibility of parole. It is a just and appropriate sentence for a horrific crime. Dan Krug thought he could fool everyone and get away with his crimes. He just never thought Kristil would outsmart him. It was her efforts that helped solve her own murder and put a monster behind bars. At the cost of her own life, she made sure her children will always be safe. She loved them, she wanted to protect them, and she wanted them to be happy. Now, with their mother gone and their father in prison, Kristil's children live with her parents. They want to protect them. They are very surrounded by their mother's family's love. They are in a loving environment. They are given everything that Kristil would have given them. It has only been 2 years since her death, and for her parents, the pain is still hard to bear, but they do all they can to make sure Kristil's memory lives on with her children. Every day is a difficult day. You wake up and you feel the pain. And then they look at their grandkids and find a moment of peace because they see her.